This is Henry Chamberlain, and I have a interview with Casey Silver and Dimi Macheras, and it's for the book Chickaloonies. And I'm going to let you, Casey, dive in and give us like a cook's tour. What is Chickaloonies about to begin with?
So the book takes place in a time of perpetual darkness as we follow two Alaskan Native kids. They set out on a quest to become the greatest storytellers the world has ever seen. And using the language of their tribe, the teachings of their grandma, and their imagination, Mr. Yelly and Sasquatch Emoji will journey to foreign lands, learn from other cultures, share the knowledge of their own, and maybe at the end of the day, even save the village. It's an all-ages Alaskan tribal adventure about legends, language, magic, and the journey of discovering one's own story in our ever-changing world.
And Dimi, I'm going to let you do the honors as well. Maybe you could cover the main characters, whatever you want to do to start out.
Yeah, the two main characters, as Casey mentioned, Sasquatch Emoji and Mr. Yelly, are a pair of young best friends. They contrast each other in personality and in actual appearance. Yelly is in the name an outspoken character and kind of the de facto leader. And Emoji is more quiet and reserved and speaks using imagery and symbols and emojis. So he tends to be more of a quiet character.
I'm going to keep working with this dynamic. It's pretty cool. I'm going to maybe alternate back and forth a bit. I think of page 22, when you mentioned the symbols, I think that's the first time there's like an educational a moment for the reader. Do you want to maybe talk a little bit about that, Casey? Because there's a lot of educational stuff in the book for readers.
Yeah, we basically set up as kind of like chapter breaks in manga, where they have like chapter 1, chapter 2. And so we kind of took that idea and we really wanted to have everything in this first book that would kind of teach you the world and teach you how to read it or give you everything you needed to know. And so Dimi actually came up with the visual design of the language, as Atna is not a language that's normally written. And so that's kind of what the chapter break there is expressing. And so he came up with this this visual thing to coincide with a way for us to communicate how important language is in this story. It's a real cornerstone of our story and a real central theme. And we wanted to figure out some way to do that visually. And so we wanted that one to be the first one to show you, so that as you read through the book, you're kind of like, well, what are these symbols? And then they kind of tell you. I think it's one of the more interesting aspects of the book. Dimi did a great job, designing them and stuff like that. I don't know if there's anything Dimi wants to add.
Oh, yeah. That. Yeah, that's a great segue. Dimi, maybe you could talk about the creative process. How do you guys share the creative load? I'm assuming you are drawing the whole thing, writing it, and Casey's doing the coloring, or how would you describe that situation, the process?
We've worked together on comics as 80% Studios for over a decade now. And over the course of time, we've kind of found a way to collaborate. Generally speaking, yeah, I do the drawing. Generally speaking, Casey crafts the stories. But over time, we've kind of learned how to work as a team with those things. So Casey's began coloring. This book is like one of the first projects we've worked on together, where Casey did the majority of the coloring. We kind of communicate when we're crafting these stories in terms of our inspirations, and the machine we're trying to build when we collaborate in this process is like very organic, passing the art from one person to the next, and creating this kind of hybrid outcome that neither one of us, I don't think, would be able to accomplish on our own.
Yeah, I get that. Maybe you could talk a little bit about the Chickaloon village, the Atna indigenous people, the ways that you guys figure out how to present that to the reader. I think of like page 24 of the first frost celebration. Maybe that's a good example to pick apart a little bit. Or
Sure, you want to take this?
yeah, if you
Yeah.
wanted to take it, yeah.
Okay, good.
I'm originally from Alaska, born and raised. I come from a family of storytellers. My grandma is Otna Athabaskan, was Otna Athabaskan, and raised us, telling us the traditional stories that her grandparents, passed down to her. So I heard these stories growing up, and I actually illustrated some of those legends into comic books, which was some of my first actual illustration work that I've done. When I worked for the village, and this is probably back in 2004, 2005. And they were a great success. I mean, these stories are timeless, and all tribes throughout Alaska and, the lower 48. There's similarities between these legends, these archetypes, trickster. One of the stories was how we got the sun and the moon. And a big part of the story takes place in a time before there was the sun and the moon in the sky. So I always kind of wondered how I would visualize this concept of a world in darkness. And that was kind of one of the inspirations for Chickaloonies, was flipping that mythology on its head. Like, what if this was a world where the sun had gone away, and creating different ways to light this world, using northern lights. We've kind of invented this biology of glowing, vegetation and
Yes.
glow berries, which are a big part of the story. So it's pulling a lot of inspiration from the stories that I heard growing up, but not just, reinterpreting them as a comic book, but kind of taking the fundamental themes and morals of those stories and really trying to create something like new that's rooted in that history.
Yeah, I totally feel that. Casey, I know that you are a colorist. Maybe are you like at master level at this point, or
No,
I know you.
no. So like Dimi had said, this was the first time that we were able to collaborate art wise, because usually, like you said, like I craft the story, but we both kind of come up with the plot, and then I'll like physically write it, and he'll physically draw it, and usually he would do all the coloring. But it was really awesome to be able to contribute in that way, and I think that that's one of the reasons, that this particular project over the course of our 11 years or so working together is so unique. We both I kind of did maybe like 70% on the pages, and I approach things different than Dimi does. And it was a really cool way to blend our two styles together, because we both have a lot of similarities, but we both on our own have a tendency to maybe overwork stuff. And by doing stuff together, I think we were able to come to a kind of a harmonious, melody of things. And it's very much, when I describe it to people, it's like we're making a song. Where we're like the Crystal Method or the Chemical Brothers, if you want to, hit the 90s electronic references. But and we're fortunate in the same room, which is a huge part of the power, I think, of the early Silver Age of comic books, is because everything was made by people in the same room. And so you were able to really feed off this energy, whereas now comics are sometimes made by people who never meet each other. You're just emailing things, one person is in LA, another person's in New Mexico or something like that. And not to say that you can't make good comics, but there's a synergy that you cannot achieve unless you're really in the same room and you're spending time with them. And that's the goal. I feel like that we've been able to reach a new level with our machine that we've been building for so long. So
yeah, well, you and I had talked a lot about your coloring for Rat Queens and for Hunting for Hits. So I think of you as the sole colorist, but that's not the case. Yeah, that makes it more clear that it's almost like a seamless process, a hybrid process.
And that's what he's, yeah,
Yeah,
because it's, again, when you're able to work in the same room and when our brains, it's like we finish each other's thoughts kind of thing,
yeah,
like my brother in making in comics and art and stuff like that. And we've just been doing it so long that, I can, like, I'll scribble a really bad breakdown and he'll be like, I know exactly what you mean. And he'll draw it and it'll be better than what I envisioned. But it just helps, to have a going off point, I think. And we both, where my weaknesses are, his strengths are, and where his weaknesses are, my strengths are. But really with this project, I feel like we've been able to elevate both of our weaknesses, and really come to a point where hopefully it comes out as you read it. It was almost like it was done by one person.
yeah, that's very special. Dimi, I want to make sure that we cover two huge topics: where to buy the book and the events that you guys are going to be doing in Alaska. Do you want to take the honors for those two?
I can talk about the events. I'll let Casey take lead on the actual, like, how to buy the books.
Okay.
Yeah, we've done, we've got our books printed. We did kind of a initial pre-order sort of deal, but we're going to actually kick off the book release in Alaska August 14th at the Bosco's Comics in Anchorage, which is a place that's like near and dear to my heart because it was the comic book shop I went to all growing up when I first got into comics. And so we're going to be doing our first book signing there on Free Comic Book Day, noon to 3 p.m. There'll be like a special limited edition print available. And Casey and I'll be signing books and hopefully meeting people and making new fans. After that, the date for the Loussac Library is the
21st.
The 21st.
Okay.
We're going to be doing a release event at the Loussac Public Library in Anchorage, where we will be debuting our experimental comic book live storytelling event that we've kind of created for just this project. It'll be the first time we've ever done anything like this. So we're excited to kind of share this new dimension of 80% Studios art and storytelling in a live sense. So stay tuned for that. That'll be really exciting. And then those are the main two events. Casey, do we want to like drop?
Yeah, we've also got on the August 15th, we're doing a signing at a local coffee shop in Anchorage, which is down the street from Bosco. It's called the Writer's Block, which is like a Sunday night, which would be like 6:30 or so. And then also on August 20th, Dimi and I will be part of an art show at the Alaska Pacific University galleries with some of the other members of the Fishhead Comics or Fishhead Soup comics group that we're a part of in Alaska. That'll have various artists, Indigenous artists and non. But we're gonna have our own little I guess room or something. Then we put together 220 prints that look really great that showcase art from Chickaloonies and some of the process and the concept stuff. And we're going to do a little signing there as well. So yeah, we've got kind of, envision it as our like Alaskan tour, as it were. We've always wanted to be cool enough to be in a band, but we were never cool enough. So we're in like a comic book band, which might be cooler, actually.
This is amazing. I hope you guys document it somehow, do like a little comics journal type of thing.
Yeah, we were definitely gonna do. We're gonna kind of document it video wise as like our Alaskan adventure, and then take that and kind of do some comic stuff because it'll be really really fun. And like Dimi said, this is just kind of a new dimension, especially after the last year and a half where there have been no conventions, there's been no shows, there's been no public gatherings, anything like that. And as that's starting to come back and people are connecting again, and we've taken this last year and a half to just really hone our craft. That's when we finished this book, is COVID. While other people were sitting around and binging Netflix, we were friggin', hunched over and doing this 2-3 times and trying to get it right. But I really, I'm really proud of this project. I'm proud to be a part of it, to, you know, help add to this grand tapestry of storytelling that Dimi is a part of, you know, and it's really something that I think can be fun as well as educational, and, you know, be representative of a culture that is very powerful and very primal, and that the more I learn about, the more, you know, I can kind of really identify with and really respect. And it's just a very special thing that I feel very fortunate to be a part of. So.
Oh, wow. That's such a good sentiments there. I had a question about storytelling, the oral tradition, and you guys kind of covered it, unless there's something else you might want to point out to viewers about the power of storytelling, because it comes up so many times in different ways in Chickaloonies. The grandmother being the master storyteller, passing down the tradition.
Yeah, Dimi, do you want to talk about your mom?
Yeah. So, you know, Grandma was the village elder of Chickaloon Village, and you know, she started Alaska's first tribally run tribal school, Yanni-Da'a School, which I attended for the first 2 years it was open. And you know, during that time, that was around the same time I got into comic books, actually. So my art really was kind of the number one focus of my life. But Grandma got old. My mom kind of took the mantle of storyteller. And by that time, I had illustrated the stories in the comic books. So we kind of took the images, the illustrations from the books, and put them in a PowerPoint presentation that my mom would bring around to schools and different events around Alaska, and share these stories in a darkened classroom with art projected kind of on the projector screen. So it really captivated kids to, you know, not only be able to hear these cool stories, but get, you know, kind of like the art image aspect of it as well, which was sort of a new dimension of the storytelling tradition. So Mom did that for about 10 years, and she passed away. And I'd like to think that the Chickaloonies project is kind of like how I'll try to carry on that tradition. And the way we're coming at this project, it's sort of like a new evolution of the storytelling format, the formula. So you know, there's an entire generation of kids now in our area of Alaska who might not otherwise have ever heard of those stories or realized the storytelling traditions of the area, of that land that they live on, and just show that this is a living culture. This is like a living, thriving culture. This isn't some historical, you know, thing that we refer to in the past, that this exists now. And I think Chickaloonies is like a prime example of how we can tell new stories, and it shows that this isn't just a culture that we're trying to preserve, but that is alive and that is growing.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to just ask maybe one more question, Casey, about the look and feel of the book, because it has a very bouncy, energetic, upbeat feel that it just brings you in. And I'm sure you want to maintain that look and feel that you guys have built together. Can you say something about that?
Yeah, we've, you know, every artist, I feel like, works endlessly to define their style. You know, you look at somebody like, you know, like Mobius or Jack Kirby. I mean, Jack Kirby especially, you're like, all right, that's Jack Kirby. You know, you look at Mobius and he's got a handful of styles, but it's all still, it's like, oh, that's friggin' Mobius, you know?
Yeah.
And it's tough. And I feel, you know, to achieve that, because it takes so long to even, I think, define for yourself what your style is in your mind, and then to actually communicate that on the page to readers. And so, you know, we've spent, like I said, about 11 years or so trying to not only build this machine, but define our style and, you know, to ourselves. And I think that this book, Chickaloonies, is the first time that we've been really able to communicate kind of an idea of what we think our style is. And we hope to really evolve it, you know, and refine it as we go with each book. But the idea of having something that is really is just very exciting, where we love, you know, we grew up in the 90s. We love bright colors, you know, stuff like that. It's very fun. And with this being an all ages book, we really wanted to channel that same energy that, you know, we felt when we read those early issues of Dragon Ball, or when we were watching like Avatar Last Airbender, or like Samurai Jack, stuff like that, where it's these really timeless, you know, stories that are rooted in these traditions, and not only story wise but art wise. You know, you, especially the animation stuff is, you know, that's why you look at old Walt Disney animation or old Time Warner, and it's still so powerful because it defined the style. And the best versions of these, you know, new cartoons and things is that honor what come before, which is exactly what Dimi is talking about, and that we're just merely trying to evolve these styles. And so the visual aspect is part of that, where we're trying to really stay true to the Adna Athabaskan inspirations that we're taking from and that Dimi has in his art, and yet at the same time present them in such a way that might be more recognizable to kids, because that's really who we're trying to reach. You know, we're trying to do something that's almost like an educational container, like a capsule, but it's like a bubblegum flavored wrapper. Like, you don't know that you're being taught. You're eating this candy that you're like, this is awesome and I love it. But after you're done, it makes you think, and you're like, whoa, that's kind of cool. I wonder, maybe I'll go ask my grandma or my mom about stories, you know, about where they came from. And it doesn't matter whether you're native or not. The whole idea is to be maybe appreciative of your own culture and other cultures, you know, to be aware of it. And so we tried to harness all of these ideas, you know, into a very kind of like manga inspired, fun and bombastic story that is very fluid, you know, that maybe we even went a little crazy on it, but something as far as the art, we wanted to make it really readable, you know, make it where it's not just panels. You know, if you look at a lot of the pages in here, they're the breakdowns and the designs are, you know, sometimes out of the box. And the idea of working in these kind of educational chapter breaks was also a way for us to communicate with the reader directly through the mediums or the avatars of these characters, you know. And really hoping to be able to expand upon this world as we go. And then book 2 and 3 and 4, you know, as they leave Chickaloon and get into the rest of the world, it's a chance to really be able to expand it beyond just, you know, Chickaloon, and show the rest of Alaska and also the rest of this world that we've done, which has all these different cultures. Our goal is really to be able to collaborate with other cultures and work them into the story and make this a very, you know, I don't know, all walks of life kind of story, and just show how alike and how similar we all are despite our perceived differences. The idea of every culture has stories, every culture has a certain language. You know, we all speak the same language. It's just a matter of knowing how to listen. And that's really a way of us, you know, what we're trying to do with our comic is use as a vehicle for that, to communicate these ideas to people at a young age. And, you know, if you read it and you're just like, that was a fun adventure story, that's awesome. That's the goal. You know, I always go back to what Frank Herbert said, you know, which is the first rule of a writer or whatever is to entertain. Second is to have a message, but you don't want to beat them over the head with it. And that's what we're really trying to do, is do some form of, you know, representation and some awareness that isn't, you know, wearing it on the sleeve and just beating over the head. We're really trying to make something unique and new that honors where we came from, where Dimi came from, and not being disrespectful to what has been done before, which, you know, I hope we achieved.
Oh, yeah, of course. I was really looking forward to chatting with you guys, and both of you guys delivered thoughtful, engaging conversation. I want to make sure that just spell it out for us. Where can you buy Chickaloonies?
So Chickaloonies right now is available through our Etsy store. If you search 80% Studios on either Facebook or Instagram, it will lead you to the store. We've been posting a lot of stuff on social media, hype and videos and things like that, and it all leads back to the store. So books are $25. We're shipping them out. We sign all of them. They're 100 pages, full color. And they look really good. The printer did a really good job, and you know, they're nice kind of wide size, something that I think kids can really kind of sink their teeth into, and you know, it's really vibrant. So yeah,
Well, you guys have got it really nicely set up. I just wanted to make sure that you stated it verbally. I'm going to have enough enough references to where to buy it, so it'll be clear.
Cool.
If I almost want to go into a whole conversation and ask you about your favorite comics and music, but maybe this is a good place to stop unless you want to.
It's up to you. I mean, I'm open. I mean, Dimi, I don't know. I mean,
No.
Yeah, I'm no rush.
Yeah, there's no
whatever.
rush. I mean, really, whatever you want to ask. I mean, it's better to have more and then trim it than,
Oh,
whatever.
I know. I have to like make a quick decision. Am I gonna just show images and have you guys comment on images, or am I gonna just have you guys free for all conversation? And so each interview is a little different. And I think this one was good to just let the dynamic go between you two, just saying whatever you want to say. And let's just add a little bit more and see where it goes.
Sure.
Is there something on your mind right now, Casey, about comics that you've been reading lately, or old, new, whatever?
I mean, I guess maybe we could talk about like just some inspirations for where we came from on this.
Yeah, there you go.
So there's our a lot of our aesthetic or a lot of our approach to things is remix. There are no original stories anymore. There's just the one story, the hero's journey, and all of a lot of the, most literature, most anything is just interpretations of that through a person's lens. And so we have these various, comics or things that we like, movies, whatever, and we, take from them and try to remix them into our own style. And one of the big inspirations for us, as I mentioned, was Dragon Ball, the early Akira Toriyama stuff, not so much Dragon Ball Z, but the early stuff that was based on the Monkey King, where it's just this kind of fun, kid in the wilderness going on this adventure type of thing. And we really took from that kind of lightheartedness, and wanted to, and I don't know if we infused as much, but the humor as well. And then another big inspiration is a French comic called Last Man, which is done by these three guys, Balak, Sanlaville, and Vivace, who are all there's one French, he's part of the French comics industry, an animation, and then a video game guy. And it was a really cool way of how they made this comic from three different perspectives. And it's probably one of our favorite comics that we've seen in a while. And it's really something that helped influence kind of the visual look of the book, even though it's in black and white. But yeah, those are the big ones for us. Dimi, I don't know if there's anything you want to add for you.
Yeah, we speak, in terms of influences. I think, and Casey and I have so many, similar influences that we both kind of pull from. A big one for, I would say, both of us is Ninja Turtles. Everything from the black and white original hardcore comics to the cartoon, and just like the fun, the toy line. And growing up, that was like one of the first things that I got into that just basically I was obsessed with. And I realized that what I was most, intrigued by was the anthropomorphism of the combinations of people and animals, which is also a very central theme in, Native American lore and legends. So when Grandma would tell a story about Raven or Lynx, my mind immediately went to like, what would that action figure look like? Like, what would the combination of that animal and those characteristics take on kind of in a human form? So that's a big one for me too. And then the humor stuff, like trying to work humor into a comic, it's that's been a challenge, but I think like together, the both of us just kind of constantly reminding ourselves, like, we want this to be fun for, an 8-year-old. You know what I mean? To read through here and actually like maybe laugh or enjoy it. Whereas, I'd never really kind of approached anything like that before. And another inspiration for the humor that I really feel like has helped a lot is reading through One Piece. It's just something so like basic and like simple in their approach to humor that just works. I mean, I crack up at it. So
that's a really good point. And I feel like One Piece, that Oda is kind of the successor of Toriyama. I feel like he's taking the early Dragon Ball and Dr. Slump stuff and really evolving it. One Piece is a big inspiration. Absolutely.
Well, the drawing in Chickaloonies is so spot on, where you've reached a point where it's true uh, cartoon art. And I keep taking these drawing classes. I keep getting lured in, and I feel like I'm going to learn a new nugget. And the one I'm taking right now is by a master animation guy, and he'll always talk about, oh, we want to be careful not to go into character. I mean, we're trying to do representational art. We're trying to be accurate. We're trying to learn how to, where the shadows are cast, the undercarriage to the skeleton. So if you're going to be doing these lines, he says, oh, when you do lines, you're going into style. And so avoid going into character unless you intentionally want to go into character. All of that, I'm sure that all sounds very familiar to you, Dimi. That, what can you tell us about the drawing going on in Chickaloonies?
Yeah, it's been it's been a main goal to try to, approach this in a cartoony kind of way. I mean, I have a range of styles, of art styles that I'll try to do. A lot of it's inspired by Japanese comics and Japanese cartoons. And at the end of the day, for this project, it's been just trying to retrain myself to, to lean full into the stylism. Whereas, sometimes I might catch myself trying to follow those rules, like you were saying, but then I need to remind myself that for a better effect and for a more seamless, seamless kind of, reading effect, to get into, fall into the story, sometimes less is more, and sometimes simple in the simplicity, and I don't want to say bad art, but like the more simplicity can have a bigger effect, for a punchline or for a scene. And then at the end of the day, I just think in terms of action figures. Whatever I draw, I just, in my mind, I want to make sure that if there is a toy, that it would be cool and it would be fun to play with. That's kind of where my mind stays when I'm designing and drawing characters and drawing comics.
Yeah, that's very true. And this is also the first book you did digitally. You want to talk about that even?
Yeah, that was a learning curve. So yeah, near the beginning of the lockdown, I got an iPad and got Clip Studio and Procreate, and just kind of started messing around with that. And so that was my tool. My approach for this first book was doing it entirely digitally, drawing, inking, helping with the colors, all on a screen with a stylus, which was, I've worked with technology like that before in the past, for maybe for coloring, but I've always usually drawn using paper and physical medium. I can't say that it definitely has its pros, but I think for the next chapter of the book, I'm going to try to find sort of a happy medium between going back to physical art and using the tool, using the iPad and using the digital, where I think it can help.
Well, I did an interview with Francois Vignon not too long ago, and he says just to stay on his deadlines, he's had to just do it all digitally. So I found that interesting. He says
I've heard that from other people.
And I kind of have been doing similar stuff, Demi. I got an iPad a little before COVID, actually, and I learned Procreate. There's still little surprises, like I just learned about the reference option, where your face looks like a grid, and you can use that's. I don't think that's even necessary for me, but it's a little
well, that sounds cool. I've never heard of that, but
I've never heard of that.
Yeah, I think it's well, I can't remember, but it's a reference option. Yeah, Clip Studio seems like there might be a bit of a learning curve. I'm still just starting to learn how to use that, but yeah, I do enjoy doing stuff digitally, and the more I do it, the more I feel comfortable with it. So it's going to it takes a while. That's I guess my best advice to somebody who's totally traditional, that it just takes a while to get used to it. Of course, the iPad pencil makes it easier for you. I think it's a little bit easier than or maybe a little bit smoother than the Wacom Cintiq stylus. I don't know.
No, it is because I actually, as Dimi transitioned to Clip Studio, I was going from Photoshop to Clip as well. And I colored the whole book, or all that I did, pretty much in Clip Studio, and found that it was way easier to do it on the iPad than it was on the Wacom.
I see.
You know, and I also liked, it took a little while. Like I had to set Clip Studio up like Photoshop. You can change all the keys and you can move everything around. So I just set it up exactly the same way. And then it's, you know, really minimal learning curve. But I like the brushes more, and it just, for me, less options are better.
Yeah.
You know, less brushes, less gradients, less stuff. We really tried to do it, you know, with this book as flat as possible, which we didn't super achieve all the time, but that was the goal. You know, we tried to approach it rather, instead of being like, oh, we're going to get this texture brush and I'm going to put this over here and I'm going to hit this with a gradient, then we're going to color hold that, and then we're going to put texture on top of that. I mean, it just gets too much. You know, we just really just end up going to town, and you're like, you can't even see it through all the shine. So, you know, it's been a learning curve. But yeah, it's like I said, it goes back to trying to, you know, define the range of your style. And especially with this project, we're trying to really achieve this fun, cartoony, you know, it's kind of interesting you mentioned that animation guy who's teaching the class, because, you know, I feel like there's a lot in here that, you know, is derived from traditional animation, where it's like big bouncy shapes and a lot on the silhouettes. You know, we worked really hard on the characters, and Dimi revised them a bunch to be bouncier. And, you know, like you look at Mr. Yelly and he's a bit more angular, you know, he's a bit more, you know, he's a bit more aggro. Whereas you look at, you know, Sasquatch Emoji and he's very chill, so he's much bouncier.
Yeah.
You know, and these little cues that we picked up on as kids watching Bugs Bunny. You know, you look at Bugs Bunny and you look at Elmer Fudd, you know, Elmer Fudd's the bad guy, quote unquote. You know, I mean, you know, Bugs Bunny, the hero, and you don't even know anything yet. You look at Daffy Duck and you know, he's kind of like, you know, a little bit of a dick, you know, but it's all through the drawings and the silhouettes. And that's why that shit is so powerful. And it still resonates to today. And we trying to, you know, really achieve that in our character designs. You know, our first maybe 5-6 years, we approached making comics story world first. And then this one, we're really trying to do character first. You know, like Dimi came up with the nugget for the story for the world. And, you know, but then we stopped and we're like, all right, what characters are we going to have? You know, and by focusing on that first, I think that's also why this project has, you know, resonated more with people than our previous stuff.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
Well, you know what happens when you go inside a comic book shop, you start chatting, and then before you know it, 3 hours could go by. And there's a guy who lives not too far from me, and 3 hours will go by and we've talked, and he was into the conversation. He had a good time, and he kind of gets regretful, like, oh, I got stuff to do. And you know, I think you know that feeling.
No, it's easy. I mean, especially like, you know, being at the store for as long as I worked at Xanadu, you know, you have this conversation and then the boss come around and be like, I'm not paying you to talk about comics. I'm like, you kind of are.
That is part of the job.
You know, like, I understand what you're saying. Like, I got shit I got to do, you know.
But it's interesting because that is part of the job, because imagine a person who wasn't a people person, who isn't doing that at all.
I'm not a people person, but I'm a comics person.
There you
know?
Go.
And so I'm very passionate about what I'm passionate about. And
me too.
So that's and I think that's, you know, one of the reasons that our conversations are so easy. But that's the thing, is like, you know, certain comics people, you know, like us and Dimi, like, we don't get hung up on like, well, who's stronger, Hulk or Spider-Man, or, you know, what company is better. Like, who cares? It's about the medium. It's about the power of storytelling in comic books, and why year after year, generation after generation, 70 years after, you know, the Silver Age began, comics are more popular than ever, at least the characters. I mean, I would argue that comics are least popular than they've ever been, but the comic book, or the characters, are $1 billion industry. You know, how many people are wearing Spider-Man shirts, Captain America shirts? How much fucking money did the Marvel movies make? You know, all this stuff like that. I mean, it's just a testament to the power of these archetypes and to the creations that these people over the years have added to this tapestry of stories. Just like the Yane Da'a stories, you know, Dimi's mom and grandma told, and their grandparents before them, and on and on and on. It was just not recorded. It was only just passed down through generations. And, you know, trying to take that and moving it over to this different stage to present it to all these people in such a way that they're going to recognize it and maybe intake it more, you know, we can really hope to expand upon the awareness of that and the celebration of that, you know, because I think that superheroes and the archetypes in a lot of the Alaskan stories are very similar, you know. I mean, Loki and Raven, you know, tricksters, totally like that. I mean, there's a lot of stuff, and you could even say that it was the other way, that comic book characters were based on these, you know, mythical lore. You know, you think about the original superheroes, they were the pulp heroes of the 30s. You know, you can't tell me that Batman isn't the Shadow. He even had 2 fucking guns at the beginning. You know, it's the same shit. And whereas you go back further and further, where'd the Shadow come from? Where'd this come from? You know, the mysterious Raven, the mysterious bear. I mean, whatever it is, you know, it's these animals that have been around, and these, like I said, archetypes that go all the way back to when humans first told stories to keep themselves warm over the fire and scratch stuff onto walls, you know, in caves. I mean, it goes all the way back to that. And, you know, that's what we're, you know, I feel fortunate enough to be a part of, and to partner with Dimi, and to have 80% Studios and give back to this medium that's given so much to us. And for the first time to be able to, you know, really tap into Dimi's heritage, which artistically he hasn't tapped into for almost 20 years. You know, not to say that it's not a constant thing, but I mean, it was what, 2004 and 5 that you were doing those stories with your mom, you know, and your grandma. And, you know, we've always wanted to do an all ages thing. And this was just perfect. Even the name Chickaloonies comes from Dimi's mom. We were stuck as to what to call it. And Dimi was like, well, when we were kids, my mom would call everybody Chickaloonies because they were crazy and they were from Chickaloon. And he said that to me, and I had a vision. I had a fucking vision for like the second time in my life, where it was like kids standing with Chickaloonies Happy Meals waiting to get into the Chickaloonies animated movie. And I was like, dude, that's it. That's the name of the book. That's where we're going. And we're not ending until we get there and we see fucking Chickaloonies on the marquee with fucking action figures and kids with fries in their hands, you know. And who knows, maybe one day that'll be the goal. But it's just been really a universal project where every time we get stuck, something really specifically from Dimi's past has kind of come up to guide us in the right way. And I really feel like his mom and his grandma have been guiding us, you know. So like I said, it's a really powerful thing to be a part of, even though I'm not, you know, of the culture. So
very, very well said. Well, that's a big part of what makes us human, just the power of story, just losing yourself in that, in your mind, going into your mind. And
absolutely, you know,
all right,
that's all we are. All it is our stories, you know, unfolding upon us and behind us, you know, as we go, and you interact and you make choices, and forks go in the road, and you change, and you wonder what could have been, and then you continue on as to what it was. And we're just trying to record our journey, you know, in such a way and translate it that maybe, you know, one other uncool kid in middle school who doesn't have any friends will be able to pick up a comic and be like, oh man, this is awesome. No, I'm, you know, I feel good about myself. This is cool, you know, to escape. So that's really the goal, you know.
All right. Well, we had a great conversation back in December of last year. Now it's August.
Oh my
yeah.
God.
Now it's August of this year. You know, I have to pick it up again in around 6 months or so.
Yeah, we'll do the 6 month check-in or so. Yeah, no, it's weird, you know, because like I was gonna be, you know, I was on the, you know, career path or whatever to just be a colorist, and I realized I was like, I don't want to be a colorist. I want to tell me and Dimi stories, you know, and that was huge for us. I mean, Dimi too was like, you know, our friends and things would be like, no, you got to draw like this, you know, if you're gonna get a job in comics. And unfortunately, that's still really true. You know, there's certain styles, whereas like Dimi was saying, sometimes the simpler the better.
One thing that, like, anytime as an artist I speak to someone who's, say, not a very good artist or not an artist at all, they'll say, oh, I can never do that, or I can never draw that. And I just want to say to those people that some of the most like enjoyable moments I've had in reading comic books and reading sequential art, the art has been sort of like the last thing that I was paying attention to. I mean, you could even say some of the art was like awful or bad, but it's the storytelling, and it's like the capturing your imagination and putting you in the moment, and putting you in the scene with the characters and the jokes. Like, I think that's a vastly like under-recognized art form in and of itself, which I think Casey is like, innately gifted with that, being able to like, the art of crafting the story. And in a lot of ways, I almost feel like I'm kind of like adding frosting, onto that cake, that story with my art. And just, depending on the story, will kind of judge the outcome or the direction of the art. So like I said, this project, it's a story about stories, about the power of storytelling, about kids that want to tell stories. So it all kind of like feedback loops into itself.
Okay, well, that's a perfect place to put a nice bow and
Yeah.
and end it there. Thanks to both of you, Casey and Demi. Thanks so much.
Really, I really appreciate it. I'll get some pictures out to you, and I think we could even find a couple of pictures of the comics that Dimi did with his mom and grandma. I think that'd be cool too.
That'd be great.
Have some of that so we can get a bit of a range. Because we did like a couple of them that you have at your house, and we could just take pictures of. So yeah.
I can get some to you.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks. Have a great rest of your day.